Right. Let's have a look. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to do what's in this PowerPoint, and also I will make visible some sample CA questions, right? We probably won't get as far as those today, because just want to make sure everybody's on the same page before we jump into some of that stuff. But what I'll most likely do is release out a little video relevant to material for those questions, and we'll work through those questions then the next day. Okay, so today what I want to do is get everybody back up to speed on command line. Now you guys and girls are supposed to be better at command line and scripting because you did a specific module for it last semester, so we'll see how good you are. Anyway, let us see where we are. So what are we going to do? We're going to do, say, get you back up to speed with the basics of what I want you to know for command line. I'm going to practice some commands, and we may not get to do the sample questions today. We'll see how we go. All right, maybe we got this stage. 80, not too bad. So it could be a swine and take the attendance now, but I won't. I'll give it another few minutes. All right. Okay. So, like, some of this is blinding obvious. And first of all, sorry, the lab had to be online. Unfortunately, blame the first years. They've monopolised the labs today for their induction, but it's over today. So from next week, please God, or please whatever, we should be back in the labs, which would be nice to meet you all face to face and have a bit of a laugh together as we work through this stuff for the next 12 weeks. Okay, so I'm looking forward to that. Sorry, this one has to be online. So the basics, right? The blindingly obvious basics. Please don't start using backslashes, right? You guys, I know you did scripting. I know you did some Windows, PowerShell, probably stuff. You've done some command line stuff. You know, you should know the difference at this stage, right? /, not backslash if we're dealing in the Linux, Unix environment. Okay. Current directory is dot. More about that as we move through it, but it's handiest. You know, if you're trying to execute something in the current directory, you can put a ./ in front of it. But also, if you're trying to reference a file that's not in your current directory, or you might have to use two dots to go up and things like that. But we'll work through that as we go through. Okay. The blinding obvious stuff. So before we go any further, this is one of the most fundamental things, and no matter how many times I go through this with people, it still seems to, when it comes to the CI, I see people using these wrong. All right, it is really, really important that you get the fundamental usage of these correct, or you will not be able to do yourself justice in the CA. And sometimes I think it's because people panic or whatever. So just, you got to get this really, really straight in your head, the difference between one arrow, two arrows, and especially the last one, the pipe. Okay, you should have come across these. I know you came across these before, but I'm going to go through them again with you. So the first one, forward arrow, right? So I want this to be interactive, by the way, like we do it in the lab. So when I ask a question, feel free to lash it in. Don't start all chatting on the, unfortunately, on the microphone. Don't do that. Just put your answer into the chat, and we'll work from there. Okay, and don't be afraid to get it wrong. As I've always said to you before, there's no harm getting things wrong. You actually learn more by getting things wrong, listening to what the right answer is, and correcting your behavior to get it right. Okay, if all you do is sit there and listen to me and you don't actually practice the stuff, you're not going to get much out of it. So don't be afraid to get it wrong and then go, that's what I did wrong. Now I'll remember that for the next time. Okay, so forward arrow. If I asked you a question, where does the default output when you do a command line, where does it go? What would your answer be? Where does it actually go when you do something on the command line? Where does the output go? Does it? Where does it actually go? So just to show you what I mean, if I go Right, so there's my, okay, I did ls. Where does the output go? Oh, there's nothing there, sorry, apologies. Let me do ls. Where does the output go? Didn't go to a file, where did it go? Where did the output go? Well, it didn't go to the command line. Where did it actually go? What's the output? The output is the list of files. Where did it go? I know what you mean, Colin, but I don't mean the command. It's not the command line. Where did it go? It went to the screen, yeah? What's called the standard out. A list on the screen. Well done, Carol, right? That's what I'm looking for. Now, you probably all know that, and you go, what is Pierce talking about, right? It's a fundamental thing you need to understand if you want to understand the arrow. It went to the screen, right? Now, some of you wrote down there a file. It didn't go to a file. It went to the screen. If you want it to go to a file, you need to redirect it, and you need to use the arrow, all right? So in other words, if I now do the same thing, ls / which by the way is just do a listing of the root directory on this machine, okay? That's all that is. Let me actually just, that'll just confuse people for the moment. I'm going to create just 5 files there for a second, right? So now if I do ls -l, there's my listing. It went to the screen, right? If I want to send it to a file, I use that arrow, okay? So you guys practice this as we go along. So it didn't go to the screen then. It went to a file because I redirected it. And that's what one arrow means. It means redirect it, all right? Redirect the output that should have gone to the screen, but instead send it to a file, right? That's all I want you to remember about single arrow. It redirects output, usually to a file, right? So get that clear in your head, right? And as I say, that's why I did it this way, because most people, when you ask them where does the output go, they start saying strange things, right? Now, I know when you say command line, you meant back to the screen, but you need to fundamentally understand that standard out in Linux, which is where things normally get output, is the screen, and the arrow is the redirect, all right? Similarly, if we go back to our little 2 arrows, that appends, and there's a fundamental difference here, right? So watch what happens now. So I did ls -l and I put the output in. How do I see what's in that file? Can you remember how do I see what's in that file? What command do I use to see what's in the file? Cat, very good. Carol again. Cat flist, right? And it outputs in the file, yeah? Fair enough. So I'm now going to do ls -l and I'm going to do 2 arrows. What's that going to do? Is it going to send the output to the screen? Or where is it going to go? Where's it going to go, Rachel? 2 arrows. Is it going to create another file? Or what's it going to do? It's going to add it to the file at the end, right? So now, if you don't see anything on the screen, by the way, that means the command succeeded, yeah? If it didn't succeed, you get an error message. Linux is quiet. Quietness usually means success, right? So it sent that to the file. Now if I catch that file, I see it twice, all right? Just fair enough, I put it in there twice. Be very, very, very careful, right? So I'll do one more with that file just to show you something. So I'm going to echo Pierce was here, and I'm going to put it, I'm going to type it right first. Okay? Now, if I've done that right, the last line of my file should be Pierce was here. Let's have a look. And it worked, right? If I do this by accident, what happens? Yeah, well done, Colin. I overwrite the file. Now, sadly, we will all do this, okay? And be very, very careful using append, because if you forget to put in the second arrow, you've just blown away a file you may have been building up over time, right? And unfortunately, in Linux, There's no undo. It's gone, right? So we will all do this, I guarantee you. So make sure you fundamentally understand the difference between one arrow and two arrows and when to use them, right? So if I do that, I've now got, sadly, all that other stuff, which may be quite important. I've just blown it away, all right? So be very careful, the difference of the two. So one arrow, redirect to a file. Two arrows, also redirect to a file, but I want you to build on top of a file that's already there. So hopefully that is clear. Let's just have a look at something there. ls minus l, right? Oh, by the way, ls on its own is very boring. It doesn't really give you much information, right? So I always use a few parameters with ls to give me more information. And usually what I actually use is ls minus l or t. You'll have seen me type that many times over the years, right? And what it does is it gives me the listing with all some information, you know, permissions, who's the owner, who's the group, the size of the file, which is usually quite important to me, and the date stamp on the file. And the difference between ls and ls minus lrt, ls is just a boring one. ls minus lrt is long listing, time based, right? And reverse the sort based on time. So what Jesus Christ, what does that mean, right? So let me show you something. I'm going to create another file. Touch is a very simple way to create a file. We'll mention it as we go through, right? If you want to create an empty file just for testing, touch is the best way to do it, right? You can also use echo to, I could do echo just nothing into a file F6. Okay, and now if I do ls minus l, I'll see something interesting. Let me show you this. Here's ls minus l, right? So I've created F0 to F6 and an F list, okay? The touch one's created an empty file, we agree? Sorry, I'm going to show you now, Carol. So that's my basic ls minus l. Just ls minus l gives me more information, right? By default, it's an alphabetical listing. So F0 comes, see, before F1, blah, blah, 6, and FL is obviously after, yeah? So let's cover the LRT before we have a closer look at these sizes, because there's something strange there. So when I say ls minus l, and I say add t, if you look up the options for ls, you will see t means sorted based on the time they were created. So if I do ls minus lt, I get this. So in other words, the most recent ones that I created or worked on are first. See, the F6 I did last, then the F0. So that makes sense, all right? Those 5 were actually created at the same time. But because of the way the system actually worked, there was literally milliseconds probably between it did these, right? So that's why it didn't go F1 at the bottom to F5. So they were all created at the same time. So they could have been in any order. But hopefully you see that. So why? And if I do ls minus lrt, I get the most recent ones at the bottom. Why do you reckon I use ls minus lrt most of the time rather than ls minus lt? Why do you reckon? Any suggestions? You see first what's on the bottom. But why didn't I just do it? Why didn't I do ls minus lt? I'll see it first there as well. Why do it so that it's the last one? Yeah, exactly. Well done, Mohammed. Brilliant. Right, so here, just to show you what I mean, there's pwd. That's print current directory. So I'm in a little directory that I made specifically for this module, OS 2021, and we now have whatever 7 or 8 files there. But in my home directory, I have lots of files. So if I do, so I want to list what's in my home Pierce 1104, that's my date of birth, by the way, directory. So in other words, I want to list what's in the directory above me. How do I do that from here? ls minus L. Let's do ls minus lrt. How do I list what's in the directory above me? How do I do that? From there. Well, come on, scripting command line genii from last year. Have a guess. How do I do it? No, well, I could, yeah, just use dot dot. So, Mohammed, I could actually cd up above. So yeah, I'll just show you. So what you implied was this. Okay, now, by the way, you also said this, which is going to fail, by the way. All right? Because what that tries to do is it tries to go to the root directory, which is right up the top here, and looks for an executable called cd, which it won't find, and that's why I said it's not found. So it's just cd dot dot. I'll go up. Where am I now? I'm in my home directory, and if I do my ls minus l, I'll see all my files. There's quite a lot of files there. All right. So let's just go back here for a second. So what I said, that's where I am now. How do I see what's above? And somebody, Carl said, just use two dots, and that's exactly what it is, right? So that has listed all the files in my home directory. And the ones I've worked on most recently are here. See them? September 28, blah, 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 goes back to May. If I did it the other way, ls minus lt, it's exactly what, sorry, I forgot the two dots. I get the total opposite, right? I get files dated back to 2019 on the bottom, which is a real pain in the arse because I'd have to page up. So that's why I use ls minus lrt all the time. Okay, just a simple thing. A couple of things popped out there, by the way. The difference between the root directory and your home directory. Then we tell me, well, I've told you, but my home directory is /home, so pwd, right? That's where I am at the moment. My home directory is /home Pierce 1104. Yours will be /home/ whatever. Mohammed is probably, God knows what it is. Luke Duff, God knows what it is. It's whatever. You'll see it, right? Yeah, that's your, if I ever ask you the question to move a file to your home directory, it's there. All right? That's where it is. What's the root directory? Because there's a fundamental difference. People confuse the root directory with your home directory. Your root directory is what? Or the root directory is what? In Linux. Where's the root directory? No. The root directory, think about it. The root of all evil, the root. No, it's not that. That's actually, okay, sorry. I know what you mean. Yeah, all right. There is a directory probably called root, all right? But the root directory of a Linux file system is actually that, first /, right? So if I go cd /, I jump right up to the top. That's where I am, right? That's the root directory of a Linux system. It's the top of the tree. And if I type ls minus l there, that's what I get. Oh, geez, don't get into sudo, right? That's the root directory. Now, actually, you see, there is a folder or a directory called root there. But what I'm talking about is the actual root directory of the file system, right? The top, very top of the tree. And you can see there's lots. I don't have permission to do anything in here. Everything's owned by the root user, okay? Okay, so there's a difference between the root directory of the file system and your home directory, right? What's the quickest way for me to get back to my home directory from where I am now? So where I am now is right up the top. How do I get back to my home directory quickly? I could type cd /home /Pierce 1104, but that's real boring. How do I get back? How do I get back to my home directory? Any ideas? Have a go. Come on, somebody. I won't bite, I promise. CD squiggle. Very good. That's one way I could do it. Anybody else? We'll talk about squiggle in a minute. Or tilde is the technical term. I call it squiggle. Anybody else? How do I get back to my home directory? No takers? Okay, so as Carol says, CD squiggle. Where's my squiggle on this bloody machine? There we are. CD squiggle, PWD, and I'm back. Yeah? How else could I have done it? So I've gone back up to the top. What's the CD? Well done, David. The CD, that's the quickest way to do it. All right? That'll always bring me back to my home directory. And there's, in this instance, if I go to, so up the top again, PWD, in this instance, there's another way I can get back to my home directory, which is a very, very handy command to know. It's the command to CD back to wherever I came from. In this case, I came from my home directory, but it could have been a directory that's miles down the tree structure with, 4 forward slashes, lots of letters to type. So what's an easy way to get back to the directory you came from? Can you remember that? I think you probably would have done it in first year. You may have done it last year, but you definitely did in first year. It's an option you give to CD. It's a very handy one. If you go CD minus, it will jump back to where you came from. So in other words, in this case, I went from the root directory to the home Pierce 1104 directory. If I type CD minus, where will I go? If I type it again, where will I go? I'll go back up to root. Very good. All right. So really, really nice. Now, who was it came up with the tilde? Carol. So tilde is very nice. Tilde is essentially a shortcut for your home directory. So in my case, tilde is, or squiggle, is a shortcut for /home /Pierce 1104. Okay. So to give you an idea, I'm up at the root directory at the moment here, right? I don't have permissions to do anything here, to store anything. I can ls minus l, that's fine. If I type ls minus l and I try create a file, I put that into a file, redirect that into a file called ff, it's going to puke. I don't have permission to do that, right? So what I would like to do is do the ls minus l, but actually I would like to store that in my OS 2020 directory, which is the directory of my home directory. So how would I do that? ls minus l, redirect. Now, how do I tell it to put the file in the OS 2021 directory, which is currently located off my home directory? How do I do that? Give me a way to do that. Using tilde, squiggle, or whatever you call it. And it is, go on, give us a go. What did I type here? Well, I wanted to go to my home directory, so I could type /home/. Very good, Zachariah, good attempt. So I'll go squiggle. So that brings you to my home directory, and then I'll type 2021. Okay, but I need to give it a file, don't I? So I need to go / what was the file? I said ff. So that is going to do ls minus l, it's going to redirect it to home directory OS 29 ff. So that should work. Very nice. It did something. From here, from this root directory, how do I see the content of that file? Yeah, same as Carol, that would work as well, yeah. I don't have a lab. That'll create a file called lab1, by the way. All right. How do I see the content of that ff file from here in one line? Cat. But what do I actually type? Cat what? I'll give it the full thing again, right? I'll give it the squiggle /OS 2021 /ff. And there we go. It worked. And as I say, I could have done this /home slash pairs 1104, and I'll get the exact same thing. All right. So squiggle is just a shortcut for your home directory. All right. But you need to be able to know how to move around to do these things. Okay. There was something else I wanted to show you. I'll go back to my directory and 2021. And I wanted to show you something. So we have FF, which was the big long listing. That's fine. That's 1500 odd characters long. FList was 16 and F6 was 1. Let's have a look at F6 for FList first, right? And you might have a similar file that you did. You probably didn't do Pierce with it, whatever. So this is claiming that this is 16 characters long. Yeah. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There's only 15 there. But why is it saying it's 16? Anybody know why it's saying it's 16? Hidden new line, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a new line. And if you want to see it, there's a utility you can use. No, it's not the spaces. It's actually a new line. So who said it? It was Olu was right. It's actually a new line, right? So let's have a look. There's a command you can use, a utility you can use. You want to see into the guts of a file, right? It's OD, right? It's called octal dump, but I'm going to say do it in ASCII, right? FList. And there you see the content of the file, right? So you can see Pierce space was space here, and there's the new line at the end, right? And in the same way, remember I did echo. Remember I did that. I did it to F6. Remember I did that? But typically there's nothing there between those spaces, but implicitly it will always put a new line after every line. So if I do an OD on F6, there's just a new line. Okay. So again, just to see the content of it. All right. Okay. So we haven't even got to the interesting one yet, right? And the interesting one is pipe. So hopefully at this stage, you know roughly where you are in the file system, and you know how to use a forward arrow and 2 forward arrows, and pipe is now the next one. And the fundamental difference between pipe and a forward arrow, and I see people confuse this all the time. The forward arrow is to redirect to a file. The pipe is essentially joining up 2 processes, right? So what I want you to think about it is literally, I've got a process and it's linked to another process, literally with a piece of pipe, right? So in other words, the output of one process flows in to the input of another process. It's not like redirect. Redirect, when you redirect to something, that's it, end of game, that's the end of it. It just goes to the file and that's it. You can take the output of one process and flow it into the next one, and then take the output of that second one and flow it into the third one, and take the output of the third one and flow it into the fourth one, right? Why would you do that? Good question. One of the best examples I can think of to do it is if you're processing or manipulating a large log file. And the example I gave people yesterday is if you were to look at a Moodle log file, an output file of all you guys logging into Moodle, there's a huge amount of information there, right? What you accessed, what IP address you came from, blah, blah, blah. If I wanted to see every time that Colin logged in to this course since he enrolled, I could take the log file, the whole log file, and it's big, and I could process it so that I just show me all the lines that have Colin. Maybe I only was interested in a certain day. Did he come in on a certain day? And I can process it down using commands I will show you over the next week to just pop out the few that contain Colin. All right. And how you're doing that is you're doing something like a cat. That'll cat the whole file. And then you'll pipe it into something that will be search out all the lines that have Colin. That'll give me another output, and I might then feed that into something that counts those, because I want to know how many times Colin was being lazy, or maybe he's been really, really diligent, how many times he logged in the last week, right? One line and do it. I would go from a log file that's megs long to a counter that told me column logged in 10 times. All right. So really, really handy for processing large files. Nice tricks. Or everybody knows you've used databases at this stage, so you all know you can export a database usually. How many people? What are you on about, Gary? You don't put that here. You're supposed to be listening to me, Gary, not putting in your elective choices. All right. What was I saying? Now, Gary, you've totally ruined the plan. Anyway, so pipe. What are we going to do? I'm going to show you how this works, right? So let's say a simple example. I've given a simple example there, which is cat file 1 tail file, right? Well, let's run that on our file, right? So what was the biggest file we had? It was the FF one, right? So there you go. There's, I don't know, 20 odd lines there, yeah? Okay. So what happens if I only wanted to see, it was 250 lines long and I only wanted the last 5 lines, right? So I can go cat FF. I know FF is going to output those 20 lines to the screen, but I don't want them to go to the screen. I wanted to take that entire output and I wanted to shove it in to another process called tail. Do you remember what tail did? Anybody tell me what tail does? Remember what tail does? Anybody? Go on, have a go. You've had time to look it up now. Prints the last lines, right? Yeah, exactly. So what's tail minus 5? Going to print the last 5 lines. So there we go. You can see that there is the last 5 lines. Okay? So that's, I literally took that output and I piped it into a different process. So let's do something different, right? There's a few lines there that have the word lib in it, right? So instead of column, we're looking for the word lib. So I'd like to know how many files in this listing have the word lib in it, right? So I can do that. I can go, how do I search for, can you remember in Linux or Unix, how do you search for a word? What command do you use to search for something? It's not find, it's something else. How do I say? No, it's not find. That's different. Find will help you find a file, and we'll do that later. What do we use to search for grep? Well done. So grep, I said grep for lib. So now if I do that, it's going to have the few lines that have lib in it. Let's try it. There's 4 of them, right? But actually, there could be thousands, so I'd like to count them. Do you ever come across, I'm going to pipe that into something else. Do you ever come across something that counts in Linux? Do you ever hear of WC? So I'm going to see WC minus L, which is count the number of lines. And what's the answer going to be? 4. All right? So there's an example of 2 pipes. And I went from a file that could be megs. Oh, that's no problem, yeah. It's videoed anyway, Dave, so don't worry about it. So I went from one process, piped it into another process, piped that output into another process. So in other words, what went from here, from what this last pipe, what went from here to here was just 4 lines. What went from here to here was 20 odd lines. So for instance, if I go cat FF, there was actually 27 lines originally, right? So did you get the idea? How you literally just take the output of one process and instead of sending to the screen, if I want to send it to another process, I use pipe. If I want to send it to a file, I use arrow. That's the fundamental difference, right? Arrow to a file, pipe to a process. So if you want to string multiple things together and keep working on the data with a process to come up with different data, you use a pipe. If you just want to store it in a file or redirect it to a file, you use an arrow. All right. So if I ever give you a question that basically says, do this and store the result in a file, the very last thing on the command line should be the one arrow to a file. It shouldn't be the first thing because it's the last thing, right? You are creating a file at the end of the idea. So let's keep going. They are the fundamental differences between these three, and I spent about half an hour on them because they're fundamental. Okay, you must understand how they work, otherwise you're going to struggle with the questions. So let's go on here. We have 1, 2, 3. There are 10 things there, right? So what I want you to do is I will go through these in about 10 minutes, right? You probably don't need 15 minutes, but anyway, I want you to go, now that you've got back in the groove a little bit, and practice each one of these and make sure you know how they work, right? And then I will go through the fundamentals of them just to make sure you get it. But please don't just go and drink tea for 10 minutes, right? Or go and have a chat with someone else for 10 minutes. Try them, okay? Because if you don't try them and just watch what I do, you won't actually learn much, right? You actually have to try them yourself. Either get it right or wonder what the hell happened there. And then when I go through them, maybe you'll learn. All right, so I've given you some examples here you think you should be able to do. All right, and try them. So it's, what is it? It's oh, just one thing, by the way. In the lab, obviously you're allowed to go and, look up the Google monster. Basically says, how do I use find in Linux, right? You're allowed to do that, yeah? And it'll give you loads of information, right? TechMint, by the way, is a really good resource. See that there? TechMint, really good resource. In the CA, you're not allowed to use Google, right? If you use Google, you get a 0 for the CA, right? But what you are allowed to use is the man page or the manual page, right? So if I go, I can't do that, but what I can do in the CA, so in the lab you can use Google. In the CA, I can do this. And I get all the information, right? That's fine. Or I could use man ls. And if you go down there, by the way, in ls, you will find the -l, the r, the t stuff, right? It's all there. So get used to using those man pages because you are allowed to use those in the CA, but you're not allowed to use Google Monster, all right? So I'm going to give you 10 minutes, not 15. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to play with those. So it's 11:40 now. So 11:50, I'll come back and we get to play with those and see how you get on, okay? So try those for 10 minutes on your own. I will shut up now. Okay. So, what do we get here? Carol, did you figure it out where the extra line is? There's calling Carol. Figure it out? Don't talk to me. Basically, it's if you look at my, I think, yeah. So my FF is an example, right? And it's got how many files was there? There's, I think, what was it, WCFF? By the way, if you just run WC on a file, you'll get three things: the number of lines, the number of words, and the number of characters, right? So it's saying there's 27 lines, and the reason why there's actually only 26 files, that's where the other line is coming from, okay? That one. See it there? It's a total. Can't see it there, what you're sending me. What you're sending me. Oh, God. Jesus, where's God? Hold on. Yeah, grand. Okay. Sorry, with all teams having a bit of an embolism there for me. Right, let's go back and have a peep here. And we're going to go to briefly to, I've already done the man, so I'm not going to do that again. I've already done CD, I'm not going to do that again. PWD have done that, LS have done that. Make there, remove there, right? So this is, you definitely need to know how to do this properly, okay? So in its, let's go back to where am I at the moment? I'm in the right place. So what have we got? We have just files. We don't have directories. So first question is, can I use touch to create a directory? Did anybody try that? Can I use that? No. Just the answer. Touch will only create a file. All right. So I need make there to make a directory. So I'm going to make two directories. Dir1 and dir2. All right. And now if I do my ls minus l, there they are there. Okay. Or if I do my ls minus lrt, there they are at the bottom. All right. Nice and straightforward. There's nothing in them at the moment. So if I want to, first thing I'm going to ask you is, if I want to create a file from here in the directory dir1. So if I want to create a file called f1 in the directory dir1, how would I do it from here without going into the directory? Anybody want to have a guess? How do I create the file in that directory from here? Well, we know how to create a file. What command do we use? An empty file. Touch. So we'll try that. So touch. Okay, but I want to create it in the dir1 directory, and I want the file to be called f1. So what do I type now? I want to do it in one go. How do I do it? What do I type there? Do I just type F1? No, because if I type F1, it's going to work on the F1 that's in my current directory. How do I reference a file that's in the other directory? Touch file 1? No. So the arrow, so just if you go touch file text arrow, okay, I'll just show you what happens there, right? So if you try, and don't be afraid to try yourself. If I do that, right, it's basically saying, it gives you this cryptic one, right? But think about what you did. Touch file 1, and then you said the output redirect, but you didn't tell it to go anywhere, right? So look what actually happened there. You actually created nothing, right? Because that's a totally invalid command. Yeah. Touch file. I know what you're trying to get at, right? So I think you're trying to do this, right? Yeah. Something like that, is it? Okay. So, and this is the misconception people make, right? Redirect is going to redirect what goes to the screen. All right. So if I type that, it creates the file.txt. What goes to the screen? What went to the screen? So I'm glad you said it this way, because this is going to, maybe this will help people understand. What goes to the screen when I do this command, right? So it created a file. What went to the screen? But when I ran that command, what went? Nothing, right? So look, if I do this, if I did that, right? What's in file 1? What's in file 1 now? No. What's in file 1? It's empty, right? It's absolutely empty. Yeah? Watch this. If I go cat fff, right? Is there a file called fff? No. So if I type this, I get an error message, right? There it is there. If I type this, what's going to be in file 2? The error message, okay? So if you use redirect, it's what's on the screen goes to the file, not, it's the screen output of the command goes to the file, right? Not what the actual command did. So hopefully you understand the difference, right? So going back to what we wanted to create a file. So touch dir1 f1, right? That will do it. Well, if you type touch, or if you spell touch right, that will do it, right? So that will do it. Basically, all it is I want to create that file and I reference it by using the standard way. Okay, that will do it. If I want to create, there's another way to do it, right? Which is cd dir1, yeah, and touch f2. That'll do it as well, right? So now I'm in dir1. There's the 2 files. But if you want to do it from above, if you want to do it from anywhere, you need to know how to reference files, and you reference files using the slash or the dot dots to go up. All right. So let me show you, just to drill it in, right? I'm going to go back up. I'm going to go into dir2. There's nothing in there. We didn't create anything in. I want you to create a file called f3 in the dir1 directory. So at the moment, I'm in the dir2 directory. From here, I want you to create a file called f3 in the dir1 directory. How do I do it? I'll give you a clue. We're going to use touch. Now, what's next? I'm in the dir2 directory. I need to create the file in the dir1 directory, and I want it to be called f3. How do we do it? What do we put here? Okay, decent attempt, right? I'm going to try that. Watch what happens. All right, it's going to say I don't have permissions. All right, it's actually going to say no spoiler direction first, because what's wrong with, in fairness to Zachariah, at least he tried. What's wrong with that? Where's the dir1 directory in what Zachariah suggested? Where's the dir1 directory? Have a close look at what's there, right? So where's that? Now, in root. Well done, Carol, right? So what that's actually doing is it's basically saying, I want you to go up to the root directory, and I want you to go into the dir1 that's off the root directory, and I want you to create a file called f3. There is no dir1 directory, and even if there was, I wouldn't have permissions, right? So Luke says, try it this way, which is, again, same problem, Luke. It's going to go up to the root directory and look for a directory called OS 2021, and then a directory under that called dir1, and then create a file, but it doesn't exist, right? So you're all close, but you're forgetting something. Where am I at the moment? I'm there. Where's dir1? It's off. Now forget sudo, right? I don't want sudo. Sudo is if I want to do something as root. This is just fundamentals of where is the directory, yeah? How do I get from dir, I'm in dir2, how do I get to the dir1 directory? What's the first thing I need to do? So this is nearly right. If I can find it again. Touch dir1 F3. It's very close. Yes, thank you. Fine, somebody's awake, right? So Luke suggests cd ... So I don't need cd ... I want to do it in one go, Luke. So I just literally type that. Okay. In other words, I want you to go up one directory, which will bring me to OS 2021. Look, I'm here at the moment, right? If I go up one, I get to here, and then I go down to DR1, and then I create the F3, and that will do it. Okay. So if I go up now into DR1, I should have 3 files. And sorry, I did CD. Yeah, that's why I'm spending so much time on this, because you need to understand how to move around, right? So there's my thing. So we go into dir1. There's my 3 files. Okay. So yes, you could do it with tilde as well. And you could reference it from that, but it would be overkill because I'd have to go tilde. I'll show you. So I'm going to go back, up one, back down to DR2, right? Where am I? I'm in DR2. If I want to create an F4 in DR1, I think Carol suggested, somebody suggested use the tilde. Okay, I could do that. I would have to put in tilde OS 2021. I would have to put in a bit more, right? But that will work as well. Watch. No error, means it worked. Let's have a peek. Up, back down. I'm going to CD, back down. I'm going to do ls minus l. There's my 4 files. All right. Right. Hopefully everybody gets that. If not, go back and look at this, listen to it. You need to be able to move around. All right. In the CA, I will ask you to do things in one line. Yeah. If you do it in one line, you get all the marks. If you can do it in a few lines if you want, but you won't get all the marks. All right. Because obviously there's loads of ways of doing anything, but I need you to be able to understand how to move around from the one line. All right. So anyway, this was about make dir, believe it or not. Where am I? PWD. Back up. So I have 2 directories here. LRT. DR1 and DR2. If I want to see what's in them from up here, ls minus l. DR1 has 4 files. DR2 has nothing. Okay, so what did we say? We said remove dir. We'll remove a directory. So let's try it. Remove dir DR2 first. That worked. It's gone. All right. Remove dir DR1. Okay. Why didn't it work? Because you can't remove a directory that's not empty with RM there. All right. You have to go in and get rid of the file. So in other words, I would have to go in, 4 files, RM star. Star is the wildcard for everything. Now my 4 files are gone. Okay. My DR1 is still there, but now I can get rid of it. Sorry. Okay, fine. Now, I'm actually going to show you something else. I'm going to make it again. I'm going to put a file in it. Okay, so now DR1 has a file F1, and we know RM there won't work, but there is something that will work. there's another way of removing it. If I type rm minus r recursive, yeah, that will actually get rid of it. Right? Be very, very careful with something like this. If I do that, that will, from the current directory I'm in, blow away all the files in the current directory and in every directory underneath. So be very, very careful when you use rm minus r, right? Be damn sure you know what you want to remove. It's extremely dangerous, all right? Just be careful. Anything recursive is dangerous. Okay, let's go back. Where are we? RM, we did just remove stuff. Cat, we did. Echo, we did that. Another way of creating a very simple file, just use echo, right? Simple file. I've now called F7, cat F7, right? Really simple way. So the two ways of creating is a test file: echo something into it, or just use touch. All right. Obviously, with echo, you're going to get content. With touch, you'll just get an empty file. CP, copy, move, WC. WC we've done. Copy, very, very simple. I'm going to call F7, F7.2. And I have two versions of it. And they're identical. Okay. What did ls minus l? There you are. F7, F2, they're both the same. Okay. Very executed copy. I'll give you one more chance to redeem yourselves. Make their one. I want to make a copy of the file F7, and I want to put the copied file into the dir1 directory, and I want that file to be called f7.3. How do I do it? From here, copy. I want it to go into the dir1 directory. I want it to be called f7.3. How do I do it? Any suggestions? When I've asked this before, I've asked things like this in a CA before, I've got redirects, right? And hopefully at this stage, you would know that if I go CP, there's no redirects, right? Because redirects will just do what the screen output is. So it's just the name of the file. Okay, you can call it whatever the hell you want. So what have we got? Copy F7. Okay, so where's dir1? dir1 is in the current. Look, so you're very close, right? dir1 is here, yeah? So what did you suggest? You said copy F7. You went, so you were very, very close, right? F7.3. F7.3 is just the name of the file, right? So you're very close. There's only one problem. What does that two dots mean? What's the very, yeah, it's going to go up to the previous one. There is no dir1 off. The dir1 is off the current directory. Yeah, very good, Colin. That's basically the answer, right? Sorry, somebody, Mohammed, you basically had this. Remember, that's the root directory, that slash. So that ain't going to work, right? You have two options. You can do this, which is just put it in the dir1 directory of the current, yeah? And the way of the current, if you want to get used to doing this to help you, that's the same thing, because dot, remember the very first thing we said, dot means the current directory. So that will work. Or I'll just do another one. That will work. All right. So if I do ls minus l dir1, there's my two files. Okay. Now, move mv. I am now down. Where am I? I am in my dir1. There is just the two files here. I want to move f7.3 into my OS 2021 directory. So I want to move it up a directory, right? Move f7.3. What am I going to type here? I want to move it up a directory. Just moving it. So I'm not copying it. I'm moving it. It's going going to jump out of this directory into the other one. Oh no, okay. So again, you're close, but like CD is a separate command all on its own, right? So you want to move the file up. What do you type for up a directory? Well done, Ivan, right? All you do is that, okay? So 2 dots means stick it into one above, right? If I do, what else have we got here? Someone said this. I think that might work as well. Yeah, that worked as well, right? And sorry, if I do it again, it's going to fail. Why did it fail the second time? Why did it fail the second time? Why did it fail the second time? Because it's gone. Yeah, grand. So you can either do that or you can do that. That will work, right? So both Luke and Ivan were right. So Mohammed, you let's try it with 4. You suggested this. All right. What did that do? So we didn't get an error, so it worked. But what actually happened? Mohammed, what do you reckon happened? Before I type ls here and see what's in my current directory, what do you reckon happened? Why would you say move to the root? There's no / there. Root is /. Look at the command. You said move f7.4 space cd ... What's the command line actually going to see? It's going to see, right, the source file is f7.4, and if he's moving, I'm looking for the name of another file. So what's it going to do? I think it's going to move the file f7.4 to a new file called cd ... That's what I think it's going to do. ls -l, and you have a new file called cd ... Okay, that's basically what it did. There's nothing wrong with what you typed. You can call a file cd ... believe it or not. So I'm going to remove that one because that's going to cause, and now it's gone. Right? You can do this mad stuff. So you just need to try not to guess. Try practice and see what goes wrong and what goes right. Okay. What you saw there, by the way, is the fact that there's no such thing as rename in Unix. So if you want to have let's have a look here. If you want to rename a file, so I actually don't like the f2, the f7.3 file. I'm going to rename that to be f7.3. I can just go move f7.3 to be f7.3. And all it's going to do is going to move that file to that file. It's the same as rename. Okay. And you can also, by the way, move to rename a directory file. So I can go 1. I'll actually call it dir1 to dir1. And now I don't have a dir1 numeric anymore. I have a dir1 with 1 spelt. It's the exact same content. Well, exactly in it is it. All right. You can move a directory, and there could be loads of stuff in a directory, and you can just move it. Okay, so that's that. And WC we did. If you type WC just on a file, FF for instance, as I said, you get the number of lines, the number of words, the number of characters, and the other way to do it is to cat the file and pipe it through WC. You will get a similar output, not exactly the same, but you get a similar output with the same content. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you're unsure what WC does, if you type man WC, you get all the goodies. All right. Okay. Right. How we doing? Okay. Oh, grand. So next one. These are the last ones we'll try today. We'll leave these ones to a separate video. I'll probably release a separate video for that because they're the ones. The last ones are the ones that you're going to need to be able to do the more crazy stuff for the CA. Okay. This is the easy stuff, by the way, at the moment. The stuff that you should already know. I hate to tell you. Anyway, next one's to try. I'm going to give you, what's that now? I'm going to give you probably about 8 minutes to play with these, right? So in other words, same thing, play with those. We've done clear already, and the rest you haven't done really. So I want you to just have a quick play of those, make sure you understand what they do, make a few mistakes, and then I'll briefly go through them as well. All right? So I'll give you to 12:22, we'll say. Okay? Right, 12:22. Oops, apologies, late back. I am coming back. Bear with me for a second. So what happens when you work from home? People distract you and annoy you. Let me see. Tidy up where I was, sorry, apologies. Right, let's share again. Here we go. That should be right. Okay. Right, so what's left? No questions there at the moment. Clear, date, blah, blah, blah. Let's go quick. Clear, we've done. I'm not going to do that again. Date is an interesting one. So, reconnect here. These years, come back. There we go. So, date. If you type date, you get something that looks like this, right? Which is gives you the date, the time, blah, 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 and the time zone. If you type time, by the way, you don't get that at all. You get something to do with using CPU cycles. So you don't want that, right? If you want the date or the time, you use date. And it comes out in that format. And if you do man date, there's loads of different formats you can give it. I'm not going to go through them all. You can do that yourself, right? So there's date, right? One interesting thing is, and I'll give you a sneak preview into some of the stuff we will use you can manipulate outputs, right? So as I said, that goes to the screen, and obviously you could send it to a file, but also say I just wanted to get the time, right? I literally just want those fields. I'm not interested in the time zone, I'm not interested in the date. I literally just want that, okay? One of the commands I'm going to show you, not today, next day, is cut, right? Very, very powerful. There it is there, second last one there, right? And what it allows you to do, it allows you to rip out fields out of input, all right? So for instance, if I do date, and instead of sending it to the screen or sending it to a file, I'm going to send it to another process. I'm going to use pipe, and I'm going to use cut. And in this case, the delimiter between these fields, right? So this would be, if that's a string of data, there's a space in between all those, right? So I'm going to say the delimiter, and I'll explain this better when we do cut properly, right? Delimiter is space. And if the delimiter is space, I'm going to go and get, that would be field 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to take out fields 5 and 6. And I'm going to just put them on the screen. There they are. Okay? So I just get the time. So you can very, very easily manipulate contents. And again, if you think back to the example I gave you on, say, a large log file, I could, and I might show you this the next day, I could take a large log file from Moodle and I could just rip out certain lines and fields really, really quickly. All right? So that's date and a sneak preview into cut. What we do. DF, what's DF? DF is basically tells you how much memory you're using on the various file systems that are running in this environment, right? So in this environment that Google give you, it has all these different file systems, right? The one we're interested in is this one, okay? That's the space that Google give me, the /home directory in this case, right? That Google owns all that stuff, right? So for instance, you know, it gives me 5 gig. Yeah, this is in kilobytes, right? So it gives me 5 gig. See, it's got loads of other stuff. It's got 62 gig worth of stuff there. It's all different stuff, right? It gives me 5 gig I can play with. And I've used at the moment 3.7 gig, right? See it there? 79% used. So if you look at yours, God knows what you have, right? But that's the environment it has given me. Okay, and if you want to see the file, so again, I could take that. For instance, say I wanted to just rip out that line, I could go df, and one of the commands we'll look for and we'll use in next week is grep. Allows me to search. So I go grep home. I just get that one line, all right. And similarly, I could grab those fields if I wanted to, but that's for another day, right? If I just was interested in grabbing that, wanted to produce a report, right? So, quick example, that's DF. Can be handy if you're running out of space and you want to know. And find is very interesting. So someone suggested when you were searching for patterns to use find. That won't work. If you're searching for pattern in a file, you need to use grep. If you're searching for a file in all your directories, you use find. So let's go to my, this is my home directory. So there we are there. And I have a lot of stuff, right? There's loads and loads of stuff there, right? And you're third year, so you remember fondly the buffer overflow stuff that we did last year, right? Say I'm looking for the files I used in the CA and I can't remember where they are, right? Well, I can use find. There's lots of different ways I might be able to. So find, you go from the current directory. I could do anything here, right? I could do start in the 2021 directory, right? But it's not. I want to start in the current directory. I'm looking for, I think I'll look for CA1. Have I got a file or a folder called CA1? And there we go. Okay, it just lashed through them and it said, well, Pierce, in information security, you've got a folder called CA1. In IoT 2019, you've got all these, right? See them there? Similarly, I could go, actually, I want to find all the files that I have called buffer.c, because I remember I had that, but I don't know where it is. And there it is. It tells me exactly where it is, right? Okay, you'd love to hack into this environment, wouldn't you? Because you'd get all the CA files. So anyway, that's basically an example of how you can use find in its simplest form. Again, if you want to torture yourself, use the man file or use the Google monster to know how to use. So for instance, if I go, I said suggest maybe that techmint, how to use find. Let's see, does it give us anything? And look at that. Isn't that nice? This is quite handy, this techmint thing, right? Very, very good resource for anything to do with Linux. All right. Okay, so let's go back. Where are we? PS. Okay, what the hell is PS? PS is tell me the processes I have running. Now, according to this, I have a bash running and I've just run PS in it. So that seems pretty boring, yeah? It just tells me what I have done since I got this environment from Google. But if I type PS -EF, it tells me all the processes that are running in this environment that Google has run. So for instance, if you look closely there, you will see SSD, you will see Docker, right? It's got some container stuff there. It's got a load of stuff to do with how to run the console, right? Lots of different stuff. See there, start shell as far as off a shell for us, all that type of stuff. And there's my PS -EF being run by me. Okay, so that's PS in its simplest form. Again, if I just wanted to, for instance, if I wanted to know, actually, how much stuff is Google running there to do with SSH? So, well, what could I do? I can see the stuff in there, but this could be hundreds. So if you run this on a standard Linux server, you're going to see hundreds and hundreds of processes, right? So I could go actually grep SSH, and what did I get there? I got, well, it's a bit hard to see because it's got this one massive one there, right? That it's this huge thing, right? But how, actually, I'm only interested in how many, so I'll count them. There's 5 things there to do with SSH. Similarly, if you want to see the explicit processes belonging to me, if I go that Google is run on my behalf, if I grep for Pierce, I get all those. How many were there? 19. How many were there in total? Okay, so hopefully you get the idea how you can string these things together. Remember, pipe is I want to take the output of this process that normally would go to the screen and I want to shove it into another process. I want to work on it with another process. Whereas if I want to shove it in a file, I use an arrow. Okay, don't confuse the two. Yeah, if you use an arrow, it's going in a file, and what's going in the file is the stuff that would have normally gone to the screen. all right? Nothing else. What normally would go to the screen is what's going to the file, all right? So hopefully you can understand the difference. Right, let's have a peep here. Kill. So why would we use kill? Okay, well, let me show you an example. So say I do sleep 5. That's literally just going to go asleep for 5 seconds and then it's going to stop, all right? So did you notice that while that's sleeping for 10 seconds, while it's sleeping, I can't. My command line is gone, all right? Yeah? Because the process is taken over the foreground, yeah? I can't do anything. And what it did was when it came back, it says, oh, now I'll try run what he did, right? So I'll show it a different way, right? So if I go sleep 10, and then I type ls minus l, I don't get anything for my ls minus l because the foreground, the process is running, yeah? And then I got my ls minus l when it came back. So sometimes you start a process and then you realize, oh Jesus, this thing is going to take forever and I didn't mean to run it. How do you kill it, right? So there's a couple of ways to kill it. I didn't mean to type 10, I meant to type 2. So if I type Control C, I will kill the foreground process. It's gone now, not there, right? So let me run it again, but I'll run it in the background and I will run it for 50, right? So remember the little ampersand thing? That means run it in the background. So it's still running, but I have my command line back. So now if I type PS, I see there's my sleep process running, see it? And it's got a process ID of 6869. And actually I've decided I want to kill it. If I type this, it'll kill it, right? So there's 2 ways to kill a process, 2 simple ways. If it's in the foreground, Control C, bang. If it's in the background, just do a PS, find out what the process is, and then kill it using its process ID. Okay, hopefully that's reasonably straightforward. grep, we did an example on how to do that. Search for a pattern. Let's have a look at FF for a minute. Jeez. What was that? What did I put in FF that was, wow. What did I put in FF a long time ago? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Oh, 2021. Jeez, I was wondering. Okay. Okay, that's better, right? So, FF. I can search for a pattern. So the file contains that at the moment. I want to see how many times the word lib occurs in that file. So we know how we can do this. Lib. Okay. I got 4. Yeah. The other way I can do it is I can go grep lib and I can pass it. I can give it the file. All right. I get the same answer. Just 2 ways of doing it. Yeah. No big deal. I use the pipe because catff will send the whole file to the screen. I pipe it into another process. Whereas I can just do this as well. Grep lib takes by default a file. But if you want, you can either give it a file on that side or you can give it the data on this side, on the left-hand side, right? So a little bit tricky to get your head around that. Again, you just need to practice a few things. But what you shouldn't do is this. Okay? I'm not sure what this will do. It actually gave the same thing, but technically it's wrong, right? Because that one there is superfluous because you've just given it the input on the left. All right. So what actually happened is the command line did that. grep took its input from there and ignored that, or did it? Let's have a look. Actually, let's echo just to test that. If I go lib test, I'm going to append it onto FF. I don't want to do that. Sorry. Bear with me for a minute. Get rid of that lib test there. Okay, so FF is in its, I'm going to copy FF to FFF. And now I'm going to do Okay, so FFF, right, has the extra line. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and do this. Yeah. So this will tell me which one did it ignore. Because I'll be honest with you now, I'm not sure. Look what it did. It actually ignored the first one, right? So I wanted to, so in other words, if I ask you to do this and you pick the wrong file, so it ignored that, right? Because that took precedence. Because look what it did. It gave me the fifth one, which is in FF, but not in FF. So if I asked you actually to tell me how many are in FF, you'd get the wrong answer because you should have done that. So be careful with that. There you go, we learn something new every day. And sorry, top again, top can be very handy, and we will use it more in subsequent labs. But top basically tells me everything that's running in my environment. It's like task manager. Okay, so everything's nicely well behaved here. Nothing is using too much CPU here. But in a few weeks' time, next week, I think, I'll show you what happens when you start running some bad processes and they gobble up all the CPU, and you can see the effect here. All right. Okay. Any questions on that? Because I'm not going to do those today because I think you're all half asleep at this stage, and we're going to leave that for a separate. What I'll probably do is release that stuff as a separate video, and then I will just give you an idea of what you're getting yourself into here. Let's just go here for a second. Let me do this. You're all very quiet there. You and interviews are best of luck. So let me show you here. I gotta go down here. All right, so I'm going to make these visible now. Okay, so if you go, this is what you should see. Right, okay, so if you go in here, this is just an input file, right? With lots of lines, there's duplicates in there, there's all sorts of stuff in there, right? So these are sample questions from, you could get in a CA, most of them you could get in a CA, right? So an example, you know, create new files with just the first and the fourth lines that give you an idea of what you might need to do. Now, in order to do it, you're going to need to know how to do these ones. So I'll release out a video for you how to use those ones. And then what I suggest to do is you practice on these. And I will go through these next week. I will go through that stuff next week and these. All right. But it's worthwhile just to see how good you are. Try these on your own. Watch the video. I'll release it out. And then see how you get on. Okay, but we'll go through them next week anyway. But you need to be able to do some of these things, be able to do the CA. All right. Any questions? Not saying any. Didn't get a full on. Can't remember whether I did that. Because more than 22 or something. No problem. Okay, all right, listen, I'll let you go. I'll kill the video and I'll leave it at that. And we will see you for lectures tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. How about that? Be good. Take care of yourselves.